It was a very bad weather on the West London Railway. The engines are always trying to keep up with work. Rain was starting now. Yes, I remember the time when I've been bumped off the track and into the muddy pond where I was doing Megan's work. And one thing to remember, water is never good when freight cars are near. Oh yes, I remember that. I seem to remember that I had once stopped on the main line because of my crankbanks broken up. And luckily, I was brave enough to get to the tour's home safely. Oh yes, I remember just once when you proved to be useful and reliable. I'm glad you had no trouble traveling through the stormy night. Looks like you're afraid of water today, as I've heard about, Mark. I am not. I just got stuck in it with the cars pushing me. Sure you are. I'm not scared of the water. Besides, I'm the most bravest engine on the railway. All I've got to do is to puff through the flooded track, and nothing could go wrong. But it might stop your fire, and it can cause you to get stuck, Johnny. You wouldn't feel brave if possible. Lots of water can easily cause confusion and delay that it does happen to the engines. But with me, they wouldn't dare do that to me. I'll show them who is in charge. Now, I must get back pulling passengers. Goodbye, you two. Mark and Ethan rolled their eyes. They knew Johnny sometimes could be boasting, but he was always a good friend to them and the other engines. That night, it was a thunderstorm. It had rained even more, and it was windy. The next morning, Chad was delivering freight cars of fruits and vegetables down the line to the big station. As he came round the bend, he was now heading for trouble. Oof! Chad splashed into the water, and the water had put out his fire. Chad couldn't move. Well, bouncing boulders. Felix was close by, and he had seen everything. He trundled away to find help. Meanwhile, Johnny was preparing to collect his passengers when the yard manager arrived. Mark went to go help Chad with the breakdown train, so you must take Chad's cars back here, Johnny. It needs to be delivered safely. Of course I will, sir. But what about my passengers? You'll be taking passengers as soon as you get back delivering Chad's train. So Johnny set off, collecting Chad's goods trains. He started to chuckle, knowing that Chad was stuck in a floodwater. Looks like Chad is afraid of water, so that makes two engines who were once afraid of water after those accidents they had. I'm sure I could puff through the flooded track with no problem at all. Johnny soon reached a big hill. It was hard to climb due to all the tracks that were wet and slippery. But luckily Johnny had used his sandboxes to put sand on the rails to prevent him getting slipped. But as soon as he approached the top, Johnny tried to slow down. He suddenly went going too fast because the rails were still wet and very slippery. His driver tried to use the sandbox, but it seemed to him or Johnny that they used up all the sand. Goodness gracious, how could I stop? Johnny was out of control. The Cinnamon saw Johnny coming and quickly switched the track that led to the flood, where Mark was helping Chad out of the water. Don't worry, Chad. We'll get you out of the water. It's a good thing you've come to help me, Mark. I know. I thought ever since you've helped me out of the muddy pond, it's only fair that I've helped you in return. Good thing, too. Chad was about to get out of the water when Johnny was getting near the buffers. His driver put the brakes on as hard as he could, but it was too late. Luckily, no one was hurt. Oops, that wasn't supposed to happen. Well, looks like a pond is the only place for our most bravest engine, I suppose. Mark and Chad laughed at a joke, but Johnny was embarrassed. Soon after the two engines were back on the rails, Ethan came along to take the cars away, while Mark shunted Chad and Johnny into the yards to have their fireboxes dried out. The next day, when their fireboxes were finally dried, both Chad and Johnny went back to work, although Johnny felt foolish. Thank you for helping me and Chad out of the floodwater, Mark, and I'm sorry I teased you about the time you got stuck in the pond once. That's alright, Johnny. Now you know what it's like to be a most bravest engine. And if you want to know how I got stuck in the pond, it's because back then, I was going to help Andrew mending his branch line by collecting the workmen there. However then, Megan told me that she was feeling sick because she couldn't work anymore, so she asked me to take the freight cars for her. And once after the accident I had, I didn't know if she had tricked me into thinking she was ill until now. That was when Chad told me about what happened and what she had done. Well, that seems to be interesting. No wonder Megan does this to make you look silly. I know, but luckily she had been found out by Mr. Newton and got punished. She was to do some shunting in the yards for a while until I was finally repaired. One day before I come back, Megan was doing a fish delivery that goes to across the railway. Unfortunately, after an accident that got onto her boiler by a dockyard crane, she was filming that she has been smelly all night. That happens with the fish. And it was early morning when I came back. Ethan had told me and the other engines a whole story about what happened to Megan. We feel sorry for her at first, but we're all laughing at her breaking up a smell on the way back home. I believe that will serve her right for making me do the work for her, despite that I've been trying to help Andrew. Oh, that story is very funny. I never knew Megan would have been sillier from that happen. Indeed. Although she didn't have to pull the fish trains ever again, because she is stick to the express and she wanted to keep her smart red pink nice, not to get it smelly or dirty. So I think that's about it. Johnny laughed at the end of Mark's story.